So what is it that makes Cardano special? What value can it bring to real-world business today that is unique and compelling enough to make using Cardano a worthwhile transaction? The average person regards cryptocurrency as being something high-tech and potentially revolutionary, but also something which represents the unknown and something inevitably intertwined with risk. Before we proceed into the main section of today's video, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you all to subscribe to our channel and turn on post notifications to make sure that you don't miss any new uploads. So for the average person today, cryptocurrency isn't something which they could use to improve their own lives, and for many people their perception of crypto probably doesn't stretch beyond Bitcoin or digital currency. But take something like Cardano, which does offer a digital currency, but that's really only the tip of the iceberg. Cardano's smart contract system is where the real value proposition in this project lies. Most people won't realize this, but it's not just big corporations which engage in contracts, but actually we as individuals engage into contracts big and small every day of our lives. If you buy a coffee in the morning before work, then you're entering into a contract with the vendor, as in effect there is an exchange of value occurring. You are agreeing to pay the seller a fixed price, and in return they are supplying you with a product. And when we buy a cup of coffee, there usually isn't a formal agreement to be signed by both parties, but it doesn't mean that there aren't certain terms which both you and the seller expect to be fulfilled. For example, we expect that the coffee is made fresh and the flavor is up to standard and so on, and the seller in turn expects to be paid the agreed price up front. Of course, because a cup of coffee is such a small and simple transaction, there is no need for a contractual agreement to be agreed upon and then drawn up. However, there are many situations in everyday life where all parties involved would benefit a great deal from access to smart contracts. For example, let's say that you pay a plumber $200 for a day's labor, and in that day you agree that they will carry out a specific task like replacing a broken pipe or installing a new toilet. Now in theory it's quite a simple transaction, and there doesn't seem like there's a real need or in fact any use at all for smart contracts to be used here. However, it really doesn't take much to turn a seemingly simple agreement like this into a very complicated and stressful situation. For example, say that you and your plumber have agreed $200 for the day, but then the plumber calls you up at work and says, "Well, I know that we agreed on $200, but I've just found a really technical problem that I had to fix and it's going to cost you an extra $150. All of a sudden we have a tough situation here because initially you agreed on a fixed price of $200 to do a specific job, and you didn't commission the extra work to be carried out, but from the plumber's perspective he had to fix the job immediately, and therefore in his mind the urgency of the job supersedes the need for permission. Now without getting legal professionals involved here, this situation is going to be tough to resolve if either party is being unreasonable or both are unwilling to compromise, and even then it's almost always going to be cheaper to give in and pay the extra than to instruct a legal professional. And because the agreement, like most smaller agreements we enter into on a daily basis, was done verbally, there's no easy way to determine the obligations and rights of either party. Smart contracts offer a simple, cost-effective, and effectively incorruptible method of creating a contract, which is then stored on a decentralized ledger and is therefore easily available for reference and access, without the possibility of the agreement being corrupted in the interest of either person being dishonest and cheating the other. You see, the point that I'm trying to make here is that unlike many of the thousands of other cryptocurrencies on the market, which all sound good in theory and have good slogans and use buzzwords to make it look like they're making a difference, Cardano has a real use case here, and I can think of dozens of instances like the one mentioned earlier, where smart contracts like the ones which Cardano can provide, can actually make something easier and simpler for real people. And in the 21st century, if there's one thing which a business can do to give itself the best possible chances of becoming successful, it's making people's lives easier and simpler. I mean, consider Amazon, Netflix, and Uber. They all provide products or services which aren't all that different from earlier businesses in my opinion, but what they have all managed to do is provide those products and services in a much more convenient and user-friendly way. They have all managed to integrate into people's lives and give them the best available service with the least trouble on the part of the consumer. In my mind, Cardano are doing a very similar thing. They have developed the first iterations of a service which isn't necessarily reinventing the wheel. I mean, contractual agreements have been around forever, but they're actually repackaging this old product and serving it in a way which is far more consumer friendly and which makes life easier for the ordinary person. So in addition to providing something which can help ordinary people as well as businesses of all sizes, Cardano are tackling what I perceive to be a particularly outdated area. While in the last 20 years almost every other industry has been disrupted by the internet and other disruptive technologies, the level of technology utilized in the legal system has remained pretty much the same as it was then or even many years before. And that's why I personally think that Cardano has the capacity to do extremely well, but at the same time I'm not expecting quick results. Just like when the internet itself was founded, adoption felt both extremely quick and slow at the same time. At around roughly the time that Amazon was founded, the internet was growing at about 2300% per year, and even at that level of exponential growth, it can feel slow in the moment. Even though Amazon was founded at a time when growth was crazy, actually they have gained most of their total value in the last few years. So when you're looking at an exponentially growing trend from a distance, you can properly appreciate the sheer magnitude of the growth, but when you're close up and actually living in that time, things can feel a lot slower. Looking back at the data in terms of the growth rate of the internet back in '94 when Amazon was founded, we can all appreciate that it was a great time to be getting into e-commerce. But if we were actually living in the moment, I'm sure that many of us could come up with reasons not to invest into e-commerce. I really feel that blockchain as a technology is in a similar situation to the internet in the early 90s. I mean, there's a compelling number of similarities. For example, back in the early 90s, you had a huge number of businesses flooding into the space, many of which of course failed when the dot-com bubble burst. But many of the companies who had some substance and survived have gone on to profound success in their fields. And then, just like in the early 90s, there's a lot of hype and mystery around blockchain, just as there was with the internet. Many people thought that the internet was just another fad, and a lot of people actually refused to use it, but now of course everybody is using the internet. Of course, there's no guarantee that blockchain is going to be a huge success as the internet was, but like we've discussed in this video, there are many compelling parallels. And if my analysis is correct and it turns out that eventually blockchain becomes an integrated part of the lives of ordinary people all over the world just like the internet has, just imagine what the prospects are like for projects like Cardano, which actually have a real world use case and have a real value proposition. I'm not going to get into the numbers in this video, but I will be in the near future, so be sure to subscribe and turn on bell notifications to make sure that you don't miss that video. Thank you all for watching.